Today we're going to be talking about a really important topic that's relevant to our marketplace. And in fact, I think we're going to be talking about one of those questions that has plagued man for years. I may be overstating it a little bit, but it is a challenge. And that challenge is really to talk about how can we, as merchandisers, amp up our merchandising from just being appealing to being engaging. And Jeremy, the good news is, I think we've got a pretty good answer for the folks today.
We sure do. Visual merchandising. Visual merchandising is the art and science of turning passive lookers into active buyers.
You know, what's interesting about this is there's been statistics that show nearly 76% of the decisions to purchase products happen after the consumer is in the retail establishment. So there are a lot of passive lookers walking through, looking at products. The challenge is, how do you engage them? How do you get them involved and want to purchase more? And there's kind of an area of the store that you're trying to get these consumers into. Is that right, Jeremy?
That's right. It's an area we call the engagement zone. It's about 3 to 4 foot radius around those displays. It's in this area where your associates have the opportunity to talk about products and utilize their training to help sell products.
Right, so the goal of engaging merchandising is to get folks into this engagement zone. So the question I have is, do I have to be a Martha Stewart, very creative person to be able to be a good merchandiser?
Not really.
Okay.
We actually have a methodology. We have what we call the 5 elements of merchandising. Now, the first element is landscape. Landscaping is sort of the ups and downs of the case, elevations in the case, and geometric shapes in the case. The second element is color. Color is used to sometimes elicit emotion, associate items, or draw attention to the case. Our third element is texture. Texture is really about those items in the case and how those textures interact with each other, whether they're metal or wood or the food itself. And the fourth one is communication. Communication is how we tell the story of the product or convey information about what we're merchandising. And our last element is decor. Decor are just an extra enhancing style element that maybe ties into a merchandising theme or trend.
So the good news is, you don't have to just be an artsy person or a really creative person to be an effective merchandiser. There's a methodology, as Jeremy just shared with you. There are also resources and tools to help us be better merchandisers. There are things like scorecards, a way to evaluate how you merchandise. Sometimes we like to say it's important to evaluate in order to elevate your merchandising from simply appealing to engaging. Again, trying to get that consumer into that engagement or buying zone, that 3 to 4 foot radius around those cases. So there are tools to help us. In fact, there are other sponsors that you have in the show and sell that do training. Is that correct?
We have some show and sell sponsors who work with us in setting up, who also help provide training and other resources for merchandising. So certainly are lots of resources available.
Excellent. One of the great things that the IDDBA organization does every year is they do a lot of market tours around the country. They do market tours throughout Europe, and they bring back ideas. And they incorporate those ideas in the show and sell center. And the merchandisers often then try to replicate what they see and bring those ideas to this show so that the retailers and the manufacturer partners can see new innovative ways. And so what I think we'll do is we'll show some examples from both Europe and also show how some of the merchandising teams here have taken those concepts and executed those here at the Show and Sell Center. Does that sound like a good plan?
Sounds great.
Okay, let's do that. So let's see some good examples of this concept of landscaping. Jeremy, this is a cheese shop in Europe, I believe?
Yeah, this is a cheese shop in London. And what we really liked about this particular example is that the whole store is landscaped. When we see these vertical towers of cheese and the different shapes of cheese, you can't help but be engaged when you just walk into this store.
Yeah, sometimes people would say landscaping is sort of the ups and downs of merchandising. It creates visual interest. And again, if you're across the store and you see that display, you're likely to want to walk into that engagement zone to take a closer look. Here's another great example of landscaping, again, a shot from Europe, and this happens to be a charcuterie. And again, it's interesting, you know, the shapes, loaves, rounds, how it's stacked, all of that creates visual interest, and again, the desire is to get people into that engagement zone.
This is a great example from our own show and sell center right downstairs. This is one of our sandwich concepts, and I love the different shaped sandwiches from the wraps to the baguettes, and also the elevation in the case from front to back, where the teams did a great job of using landscaping.
This is another case from Show and Sell. It's a pizza case. One of the things I think is really a great idea is, it's hard to see here, but this is actually pizza spelled out of pizza dough, baked and put in. Again, just something visually that draws me into that case, and if I get into that engagement zone, then the associate has a chance to engage with me, share with me their story, talk about the product. And so landscaping, a great way to get people into the engagement zone. Color's another idea.
Here's an interesting shot where the color goes from these deep, rich browns up in the one corner all the way to these vibrant greens, but the color comes from the product itself. So what a great way to engage a potential customer with a brightly colored product.
And I think that's a key point to think about. When you're merchandising, oftentimes you're thinking of the vessels or decor. A lot of times it's the actual color of the product itself that should be the star. And leverage the color of the product to create a really stunning visual presentation. Here's actually a great shot from a cheese case down that's merchandised in the Show and Sell Center. And I tell you, a case like that, when you're standing across the store and you see it, those colors just invite you into that engagement zone. This is another example of color blocking. Color blocking would be where you use a lighter color, then a darker color, then a lighter color to create visual interest, again, with the goal of trying to get those consumers into the engagement zone.
Then here's one more example from our Show and Sell Center where we have this great display of colored cakes, and what a great way to even elicit a little emotion with that color in that display.
And lastly, this was a cake display from I believe it may be Harrods in England. What a great case. I'm telling you, when you walk by that case, the colors are just almost overwhelming, and you have to get into that engagement zone to take a closer look. So color is a very effective tool to get people into that engagement zone. Next element would be texture.
Yeah, this is a great example from a bakery operation in Paris. And what we really liked about this was they took kind of a cold industrial concrete column, and they, instead of trying to make that go away, they tied it into the merchandising. If you notice, the aluminum display racks coupled with the marble slab also tied in with the texture of the bread. It's just a great example of varying that texture in that department.
What we find is one of the hot trends moving from Europe to the United States is this idea of industrial merchandising, using metals, chunky wood, a real industrial look. It's something that's starting to make its way over, and I'm sure you'll see it in more and more retailers over the next year or so. This is a great shot from, again, the Show and Sell Center downstairs. And it's all about the hammered metal look, and the copper creates a really, really great, warm, old world look. And again, a great trend is using metals and hammered metals to merchandise. Jeremy, this is a case I know that you really fell in love with when on your tour in Harrods. Let me talk about it.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite cases and a great example of texture. When you look at this beef Wellington on a wooden platter coupled with wooden sign holders, and the salmon is depicted on slate. They've even chipped the corner off the slate, and all this really ties in to highlighting that these are British home-cooked suppers. And I think this is just a great use of texture to tie in with the food itself.
And finally, just one other shot of texture, and again, it's just one of the really hot trends coming is slate. You're seeing a lot of people merchandise on slate. You can also write directly on slate, so it's a great merchandising vehicle and conveys a really warm texture. Let's talk a little bit about how to use effective communication. This is a shot from Show and Sell of a wedge, a charcuterie wedge. What I love about it is it's about educating the consumers, especially millennials. They're very interested in understanding more about the products that they're eating, and they're more into experimentation, which means they need education to make those decisions. What a great looking case that is. Jeremy, this is again from Harrods, I believe.
Yeah, this ties into the case we showed just a minute ago with the beef Wellington and the salmon. And what I love about this is it's a great way to tell the story of those products. And the Harrods associates and everybody associated with those products is really proud of those, and really ties in nicely with how they're displayed.
Another hot trend is using butcher paper, whether it's colored black, white, or brown, and then actually writing on the paper. It lends a real warmth to it. It also is easy to change out. Very hot trend right now is using chalk markers on paper or on other materials.
Oh, and this is a great, really simple Look how clear that offer is. 2 pounds, pick these 2 items. You even have some examples of the items you could pick. So it's a really simple way to communicate merchandising to the customer.
The last element, the fifth element, is decor. And one of the misperceptions about merchandising is that it used to be that merchandising, we thought it was putting up flowers or plants on the corners of cases and said, hey, I merchandised, I've done my job. But really, decor is just one of the 5 elements that needs to work together. Some trends in merchandising. First thing is decor should be simple. It doesn't have to be elaborate. In this example, the decor is a simple row of greenery that sets these products apart and gives each product an opportunity to shine on its own. Here's a great example of a trend right now, and that is decor should be functional. It shouldn't just be pretty. It should have a function. So in this instance, this great chalkboard A-frame is serving a function of communicating and telling a story. So if you're thinking about the decor, think about decor being functional, not just pretty. And one other shot, Jeremy, this is a great shot from downstairs.
This is our artisan bread display from downstairs, and it's great how the decor ties in so nicely with the case. We have this I-beam and weathered wood construction with the wire baskets and the weathered box with a chalkboard face on it. Really ties in well with the artisan bread.
Think about how can I leverage the fixture itself as the decor element for effective merchandising, and that's a great example. So those are a few examples of some effective merchandising, but you still may be thinking, it's interesting, but I'm not sure if I can pull it off. Jeremy, any suggestion on how we could help?
Well, one great suggestion is to get engaged with our show and sell center. First of all, go down and see the show and sell. If you've already seen it, check it out again. You're bound to see something new. Talk to the merchandisers while you're there. If you haven't, you really need to get down to that section of the floor. The second way is just to, if you're a manufacturer, have products that should be in there, think about sponsoring them or helping us merchandise them. And for retailers involved, boy, if you have merchandisers who could benefit from networking and working with a great team of merchandisers and bringing all that knowledge and skill back to your organization, talk to us about bringing somebody on as one of our merchandisers.
Yeah, great. So really, that's about all the time we have this morning. What we wanted to just leave you with is this challenge of moving from having appealing, pretty merchandising to engaging, effective merchandising. It's not just art, it's science, right? There's a methodology behind it. And so we challenge you to think about it, evaluate your merchandising, elevate your merchandising, and hopefully as a result, you're able to turn those passive lookers into active buyers. Thank you very much.